All right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co-host Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you to recap our Rams Week 2 loss to the Arizona Cardinals, where they lost 10-41 in Arizona. And it was a game that, quite frankly, I don't think any of us expected to go that way. I can definitely admit that I was wrong. I was massively wrong about this game, and I own up to that. Uh, the Rams just got absolutely obliterated, Jake. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was one of the worst games I think we've seen from a Rams team in a long time for multiple different reasons, but really, it just did not feel like they showed up to play. And I don't say that lightly. It just off the bat, this Rams team looked like they thought they didn't show up to play. I don't even know how to say it. I mean, we'll get into some things that went wrong. Specifically, we'll get into some injuries. But Jake, I think quite frankly, the reason the Rams lost this game is they were outplayed, they were outcoached, and they were outworked from the first snap. It just things looked super one-sided out of the gate, and it was really disheartening to see as a Rams fan, especially going into a game that I thought could have been a huge vibe shift for the Rams after the devastating loss week 1 against the Lions. I thought the Rams had a real opportunity to show up in Arizona and show us what they were made of, and instead they showed up and got smacked. And it was hard to watch, and particularly I felt like the defense was just unacceptable. So let's get into kind of breaking down what went wrong in this game, and then after we talk about that, we are going to touch on some injury news, because unfortunately there is quite a bit of injury news for this team. But Jake, looking at what happened yesterday in the game against Arizona, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this was there was a loss against the Ravens they had in 2019 that you and I literally started recording in the middle of. I can't
Yeah.
even hold it in because we were
It
laughing.
was it
It
was a
was.
it was embarrassing. It was bad.
I don't
Yes.
care what anyone says about yesterday. That game against the Ravens at the Coliseum in 2019, nothing will beat that. Monday Night Football, that's in front of the world. That was the worst thing I think I had ever seen. This was probably, if we're being honest, the second worst loss in Sean McVay's career. The
Yeah.
worst has to be Baltimore, week 12, Monday Night Football, 2019. Like looking through it, 2020, I mean, they didn't really have anything bad. Their losses were close in 2020. 2021, they had some bad stuff. Obviously, the no-win November, 31-10. That was a terrible loss against the 49ers week 10 before the bye. The Tennessee game was bad loss. 2022, I mean, that team, despite the fact that they really just did not have much, very similar to this year, but it got worse over time. I mean, a lot of bad games, but that was a team that fought hard despite all of their injuries. The 31-10 loss to the Chargers in week 17 was absolutely brutal in 2022. And in 2023, really, you'd have to go back to the Dallas loss week 8 as the one really bad loss. The 20-3 against Green Bay, they probably win that game with Stafford. That's how bad Rippon was. So I think really that's my issue. What I'm getting at is that they just don't have many of these. In Sean McVay's career, he just doesn't lose that badly. And you could say what you will. Obviously, it's on McVay. He's the head coach, and I get that. But I thought the players just looked off. Like they just looked like they almost quit. And it was really a disappointment because if you go back, to the original drive, Alexis, I mean, they're looking at a 3rd and 2 at the Arizona 41, and they think that they converted the pass to, Demarcus Robinson. Of course, on the other side, Jonathan Gannon throws the red flag, finds out, no, it's not a complete pass. It's now 4th and 2. And the Rams at this point, I totally understand why they went for it. And I totally get that. But them not getting that means that the Cardinals were going to start in really good field position, very similar to the Rams getting to start off the game, getting a 41-yard return, from Blake Corum. The irony is that the Cardinals, without having to have any sort of return, they started the game at the 41-yard line and great field position. They were able to put points on the board. And then after that, it's a snowball effect. The Rams not turnover, but 3 and out. Cardinals get another touchdown. Rams another 3 and out. Cardinals get another touchdown. That's how you get down 21-0. It's very easy to lose by a lot of points in the NFL because the snowball effect is real. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, just talking about the Super Bowl. People always get in, on the Seahawks and Broncos Super Bowl, 43-8. And I'll always say, if that Super Bowl starts any different than it was with the bad snap to Peyton Manning, the Broncos might have ended up winning the game that they lost 48-3 or 43-8. And the reason I say that is because it is a snowball effect. So it's important to get off to a good start. It's also important, if you're not getting off to a good start, you can't be down by 21 entering the half. And that's the reality of it. They came back down 17-3 against the Lions to take the lead, and they blew the game. I think this week was so frustrating, Alexis, because they were so different than what they led us to believe they were the week prior.
Yeah. I agree. It begs the question, were the Lions that good and we played to their level, or were the Lions worse than we thought that they were? And that's the level the Rams were at, right?
They
Because
lost to the
now,
Bucs.
yeah, the Lions went out, lost to the Bucs week 2, did not look very good. I watched a majority of that game and thought the Lions did not look very good. So it was humbling, guys. Yesterday, I thought it was very humbling, and I think it's just a shame now that we have all of these injuries that it makes a bad situation worse, right? Because what happened yesterday, like I said earlier, is that I believe it was mostly a defensive collapse. I mean, it was a defensive collapse, but it was mostly like just an absolutely putrid effort on defense. I mean, it was bad. And, the offense didn't look amazing, but there are some caveats, I think, to our offensive performance. At the moment, you talk about the offensive line yesterday, just looked really bad.
Yeah.
It was hard to get anything going. I mean, you tried, Stafford was doing his best to get the receiving game going, which was okay, when Cooper Kupp was out there, but after Cooper Kupp, it was pretty abysmal. I mean, Kyren Williams had absolutely no space to run. I mean, he took a lot of really violent hits whenever they tried to attempt to get a rhythm going in the run game. Also, you look at the offensive line. I mean, Kyren Williams was blocking better than a lot of the guys in the offensive line were yesterday. And that is just, anybody wants to go back and watch the game and look at what was happening when Kyren was in to do pass pro. I mean, he looked better than a lot of the guys in the offensive line. So unfortunately for him, because he's the only running back on the roster that can do that, his risk for injury is going to skyrocket. The run game is probably not going to be utilized the way that we want. I do have a lot of questions a little bit about why we aren't seeing the run game utilized in a way that I thought McVay would do going into the season, especially drafting Corum. I don't know if just the offensive line has just caused that plan to go out the window. I'd have to assume so, because it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, they didn't put Blake Corum in until 3 minutes left in the game, once the Cardinals had pulled out their starting defense. At that point, it didn't matter. So I'm confused of what's going on with the run game. Yeah, I want to talk about the defense, Jake, because I think that this loss, I mean, it falls on the team as a whole. I didn't think that anybody was out there looking their best, but I really felt like the defense let the team down. I really, just watching this game, and I know most people agree with me, this defense just got absolutely trampled by Arizona. I mean, they had no answer on for the run game. They had no answer in the air. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. alone, I mean, just sent them they were scrambling, over. And he's a very good receiver, by the way. And I did mention last week that I was nervous that this would be Marvin Harrison Jr.'s coming out party against the Rams. And what do you know? He ended up having 2 touchdowns, 130 yards, 4 receptions. Trey McBride did some damage as well, which I think we called on the last episode too. But Jake, I don't want to sit here and I don't, it's very easy for people who aren't in the game to sit here and say, oh, well, they just weren't trying. This defense just didn't, they weren't trying. But, using the eye test, they looked super confused. They looked super low effort, and they just looked like they had absolutely no answers for the Arizona Cardinals, who are better than I think I thought they would be. I will give them that credit, but again, I don't think they're like the best, offense that we're going to face this season. So Jake, what do you think it was that caused the defense to collapse against Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the defense, yeah, I get that they had injuries in the back end of their secondary, but that was bad. I'm not really sure, Alexis. I'm really not sure at all. I think it is the first game of the year, and you put that out there for the first time against the Lions. Everybody saw that. You watch the film, and maybe a certain way based on how they were playing defense last week, the Cardinals queued it up and saw that there were opportunities to take advantage of them. They saw Jameson Williams, what he was able to do, and they're like, okay, well, why can't Marvin Harrison Jr. do that? And so then you have that dynamic. You have the fact that, I mean, I thought the run defense was good against the Lions until the final drive. At no point in this game did it look good. At no point. James Conner had his way, just breaking tackles. Of course, he always does a really nice job against the Rams, so it wasn't really a huge surprise there. But I think ultimately Kyler Murray has taken the next step. He's turning into a very, very dangerous quarterback. And not having Aaron Donald, yeah, that might have affected it. I'm not going to blame not having Aaron Donald because they looked totally fine in the first game. But I do wonder, part of me wonders if this is really just, there's a few things I wonder, Alexis, but I kind of lean towards the idea that this is kind of what you're going to get with this defense. You're going to get ups and downs. I don't really think there's a total football explanation for why they were so bad last week or this week. I don't. I think it's really, you're going to see ups and downs with this defense and rookie defensive coordinator, and you're going to see good moments as well. The one main thing that I would take away from this team that's good through the first 2 weeks is Jared Verse looks outstanding. He's by far the best rookie pass rusher, like kind of Alexis alluded to. And then the second thing is Kobe Durant looks outstanding. Okay. Kobe Durant was once again brilliant on Sunday. He was brilliant on Sunday Night Football. He's done a great job in coverage. Kobe Durant right now, based on last game, he has a 39.6 targeted passer rating, from last night's game. Against the Lions, Kobe Durant had a 77.1 targeted passer rating. Durant is playing some really good football. Trey White is an issue. Trey White is not a boundary corner. I've said this, and this is why I thought they needed a Kelly Witherspoon. I'll say it again. Trey White's not a boundary corner. He's coming off an Achilles tear. He's coming off an ACL 2 years ago. Before that, he's had injuries. He needs to play on the inside. If he can't play on the inside, he's not a starter anymore. He's a guy with a big name. And unfortunately, that sucks to hear for a lot of people who kind of looked at him like, man, he could go back to his all-pro status and we're in good shape. But now, losing a guy like John Johnson III, who was rated as one of the best safeties coming into this week, that's a significant loss. You have him, you kind of lose, in a sense, Trey White, because if your expectations were high, I've been saying, I just don't think this is going to go over extremely well. Will you see a Kelly Witherspoon this week? I don't know. I think the hope is that he was going to be ready for week 4. but they might need to see him this week, Alexis. They might need to promote him to the roster, have Witherspoon play alongside Durant, and see what you can do, because right now it's not great. Deebo Samuel has been ruled out for the 49er game, so there is that, and so is Christian McCaffrey. But that 49ers offense is still going to have enough firepower where, yeah, you're going to need to have all hands on deck, in that corner room, be able to defend these guys. And so, Alexis, I just really think right now the Rams, there's a lot of different reasons for why things are going the way they are. But to just kind of like wrap it up, essentially, I think it's a combination of things, and I think that's okay. I think it's okay to admit that a young defense got in over their heads after their first primetime game. They played really well, and then they lost. And I think they let that loss carry them into this game. They didn't seem as inspired. They didn't seem as fired up. And I think they need to be able to finish pass brushes. I think they need to finish those sacks. I think that's really what it comes down to. If they finish those sacks on Kyler Murray, it's a different ball game. But I don't think it all comes back to the injuries. I think it's everything as a whole kind of combined. And, it's a big hole to climb out of, being down, 0-2 this year and, losing a game 41-10. But you got to come back next week at the, SoFi Stadium against the 49ers and prove everyone wrong.
Yeah, and something I was going to bring up too that was really alarming to me was like the inability to finish tackles felt very pedestrian. And it almost seemed comical to the point where I was like, what's going on here? And we bring up Jared Verse even. Jared Verse is by far the best guy in the defensive front, by far. And we talked about he's playing very, very well. But even he had a lot of like missed sacks on Kyler Murray and was not able to finish the tackle. And, I don't want to be the person that brings up, oh, well, Ernest Jones was the highest graded defender by PFF for the Titans, right? And had like 6 tackles, solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 5 run stops. And we didn't have a single linebacker that got a tackle for loss on Sunday, I believe. So it begs the question to me, why? Because it doesn't make sense. And I think everyone is very valid who's in my mentions asking about the linebacking situation, asking about the lack of pressures from the defensive front. I'm telling you, you're right. I don't know what the answer is, but you're not taking crazy pills. It's frustrating as hell to watch. And it's frustrating when you're watching an NFL team who cannot finish a tackle on defense. And part of that also goes to Kyler Murray. I'm not going to say it's Kyler Murray. It's the defense has an excuse because of Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray is like a magician back there. So you have to use some realism when talking about that. But it just, like I said, I think all around there's to blame. I think specifically the defense has got to get it together. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But looking at the game, Jake, before we get into injuries, is there anything you want to bring up specifically? I have some thoughts about the run game.
I honestly just want to put this thing to bed. I think that the Rams still have a shot. Do I still think they win the Super Bowl? Not if they don't have a better bill of health moving forward. I mean, I think that's an important thing here to understand. I think this is a Super Bowl team when healthy, but you have to understand they're not even close to healthy. They have 14 injuries. It's not good right now. So it's next man up. We'll see what ends up happening, but that's what I would take away, is that I'm really just I'm moving on past this. There's not really much I can say because it's weird, Alexis. It feels like the Cardinals played the majority of this game and the Rams didn't. It felt like the Cardinals were on the field almost the entire game. The thing that really irks me is that this wasn't like, the Rams had a shot like the Lions game and they blew it. They never had a shot. 2 of 11 on third downs. Cardinals were 7 of 11. They ran 10 more plays than the Rams for 489 yards to the Rams 245. This wasn't close. It wasn't close at any point. Cardinals averaged almost 8 yards per play. Rams didn't even average 5 yards per play. The Cardinals ran for 231 rushing yards. The Rams only ran for 53. The Rams threw for 192. The Cardinals threw for 258. And the Cardinals were more penalized. 5 penalties for 52 yards to the Rams, 2 for 10. In the possession, they were on the field for 13 more minutes. So, yeah, it's hard to really take anything away from this, Alexis, because I feel like the offense was barely on the field. The defense couldn't get a stop. And you just have to hope that they can turn it around this weekend against the 49ers.
Well, I agree with you. My only takeaway is, about going forward is that I do not believe, and I will make the statement that this defense is a Super Bowl defense. I don't. Unless something drastically changes, because that showing against, like I said, Arizona, I think is a little bit slept on, but by no means should our defense have looked that bad. And the injuries that we're talking about are almost exclusively to the offense. I mean, the defense, for the most part, I'm not saying that there aren't guys out there playing with, like, some sore muscles or, some tweaks. I'm sure they are. But, everyone's talking about injuries, and we're about to talk about it. That's an offensive problem. The defense simply got embarrassed. And I'm owning up to it because I was very wrong. And I know people have told me that I was very wrong. So that's why I'm being brutally honest. Like right now, I'm not gonna like sit here and pretend that there was even like an excuse at all for the defense. That's not a playoff defense at all that we saw. And I think people need to deal with that in their own way. But I'm very curious how the Rams will fix that moving forward. But something that we can fix theoretically, or hope that fixes itself, is injuries. And we're going to talk about that now, Jake, because this is like almost an unreal time warp that we're in right now. Simply today alone, the day that we're recording this is Monday. Let's talk about the big one, Jake. Cooper Kupp. We get word today that Cooper Kupp is expected to miss several weeks. He's an IR candidate with this injury. Jake, what say you?
Well, we haven't seen this since, not that long ago, 2022. This time, going into week 3 in 2022, Kyron was on the IR, Tutu Atwell IR, Van Jefferson IR, Jacob Harris IR, Tyler Higbee IR, season-ending IR for Tremaine Ankrum, who just started week 2. Logan Bruss was on season-ending IR. Jamil Demby was on IR. Brian Allen was out. Daniel Hardy was on IR. Kobe Durant was out. Troy Hill was on IR. David Long was out. Daniel Isom was on IR. And Jordan Fuller was on IR. One more injury than that they have right now. And, I mean, let's not act like it's not possible they fill the gap to get tied with where they were at this point in 2022 either. It's not great right now. I mean, it's really tough. And losing Cooper Kupp, I mean, I said on this show, they'll be okay losing Puka Nacua. Other guys can step up. You have Cooper Kupp. But when you lose Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, it's like going out and being like, hey, Alexis, I'm going to make a chicken and rice bowl right now, but I don't have chicken or rice. That's what it's like not having Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. How do you run your offense without those guys? Now you're not able to run your offense at all to how you want to. So it's going to be a lot different. They're going to have to try to find creative ways. He's not the only injury, though. Kupp IR is likely. Puka Nacua IR. Davis Allen out. Tyler Higbee, PUP. Joe Noteboom, IR. KT Leviston, IR. Connor McDermott, IR. Steve Avila, IR. Jonah Jackson, we found out, like after the fact, which is really upsetting. IR, potentially. Laryl Murchison, IR. Darion Kendrick and Trey Tomlinson, season-ending IR. Darius Williams, IR. And John Johnson, our guy John Johnson, IR. Likely he's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Just ridiculous. No one has it worse than the Rams injury-wise. I'm not going to sit here and say Rams fans have it worse than fans that have never seen a Super Bowl in their life, because that's just not true. But 2 of the last 4 years to see this happen seems a little unfair. Like, just a little unfair because 2023, they had injuries. They didn't even have Stafford for a game, but they were able to overcome that. These type of injuries we saw in 2022. And before that, we hadn't seen it since Josh Gordy was a starting quarterback for the St. Louis Rams. So you don't normally see injury ravaged teams like this. It doesn't happen often. The Rams are one of the more unlucky teams for this to happen twice in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, so if we break this down, talking about, losing Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua alone, right? The receiving core. The Rams, when they're healthy, have, aside from Matthew Stafford, who is obviously a superstar, they have 3 stars in the offense. You have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Kyren Williams. That is who runs the Rams offense. It all runs through those 3 guys. Unfortunately, we haven't got to see them all 3 on the field at the same time together very much at all since Puka was drafted last year due to injuries. So you're down to Kyren Williams. So now, but let me take this back. So you're down to Kyren Williams, but you're not going to be able to use Kyren Williams the way you typically use Kyren Williams. Because if you do, he's going to get obliterated. I mean, you can't now try to increase Kyren Williams' workload in the absence of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. You're already increasing his workload in pass pro. They had him out there. If he wasn't running the ball, he was literally blocking passes, or they were throwing short to him. But so he's already having to do a lot of these extra things. You can't now go to Kyren Williams and have him do even more and expect that to end well. You could get Blake Corum involved and really try to do that dual run game that I think the Rams originally intended to do. But I don't think you can do that either because of the offensive line. Now, the offensive line, theoretically, we're optimistic that in the next couple of weeks they will be mostly healthy, but as of right now, you're not getting much done in the run game right now. Not with the way this offensive line is playing, not with having to constantly use Kyren as an extra blocker. It's just not happening there. So then that begs the question, where does the offense run through now? You've lost Kupp, you've lost Nacua. You can maybe try to just have Kyren Williams run the shit out of the ball. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think it's going to go over that well with this offensive line. You're going to have guys like Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell and Tyler Johnson and Jordan Whittington really step up. That is now who this is all going to rely on. You're going to have Stafford in there. We trust Stafford. You're going to have Kyren Williams in there. I do think Kyren Williams is going to get a healthy dose of playing time still. I just think he's having to be like a Swiss Army knife right now because just of all the injuries. So it's going to be weird, and it's not a fun feeling, and it is really sad. I mean, listen, losing Cooper Kupp is not like losing just an average receiver. Cooper Kupp is outstanding. He was outstanding yesterday before he got hurt. So it's frustrating. It's very unlucky. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts to what I just said, but we're going to talk more about what the Rams potentially could do on offense when we do our preview against the 49ers. Right now, we're simply just reading the injury report, but I don't know if you have any additional comments on the hellscape that
hellscape
was. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the good news, Rams fans, is that they might be able to get Kyren Williams going and Blake Corum going on the ground against the 49ers. The 49ers just gave up 146 yards on 24 carries to the Vikings. Now, I understand 5 of those carries were quarterback runs from Sam Darnold, but Ty Chandler, he went for 82 yards on 10 carries. He got going. They averaged 6.1 yards per carry. I mean, I feel like at some point or another, something has to give. And you have to imagine Kyren Williams isn't just going to be averaging 2 whatever yards a carry every single game. So his skill set will come through. You can blame the offensive line. And to be honest with you, Bo Limmer was very bad, really bad on Sunday against the Cardinals. I thought played inspiring against the Lions, but he really struggled. Warren McClendon Jr. really struggled, which is a bummer. But at the same time, you're getting Alec Jackson back this week. If he's in game shape, and I don't know how it looks since he was suspended. I don't know if he's going to play right away. We'll see where he goes, but he is able to be activated this week as well as Jimmy Garoppolo. I just kind of see it like this, Alexis. I mean, you have, I'm not really sure who's going to be the left guard. I don't know if they're going to move, Diedick. Is he going to come off the practice squad? The USC UDFA, is he going to play at left guard? He only played left guard in preseason, so maybe him. Then you look at, Logan Bruss, and he only played right guard and right tackle, so could he even move to left guard? Then you look at Ty Nsekhe, hasn't played left guard in a long time. He's a giant tackle. Do you want to move him there? So there are some different things they need to work on. Warren McClendon Jr., does he move to left guard? Someone has to fill in because Jonah Jackson's going to hit the IR and Bo Limmer's going to be at center. But I like that Alaric's going to be back. I was impressed with the way Havenstein played. I thought that was a pretty solid outing from Havenstein, all things considered. I thought it was a pretty solid outing for Kevin Dotson. The right side is not the problem. It's the middle to the left that's a problem. If Matthew Stafford had good blindside protection, but maybe didn't have the best right tackle, I think he would have been fine to a degree against the Cardinals on Sunday. But not having that blindside protection, he can feel the pressure more than most quarterbacks. But even still, there are guys with limitations. And when you have, blindside pressure, that can really break open a game in not a good way. So, yeah, they really just need to kind of flush this down the toilet. Obviously, look at the game film. You can't throw away the game tape. But at the same time, Sean McVay teams rarely lose like that. And to be fair to this team, because I understand a lot of people look at the assumption, what you are now is what you will be, right? I kind of disagree with that, because after the Lions game, we were inspired and they showed a lot of heart. And yes, they lost at the end, but that was a really good loss. We talked about that. This loss is one of the worst losses you could have had. But at the same time, the defense was good in week 1. Week 2, they were terrible. Let's let them show us with 15 more games who they are. I'm not going to make any, broad stances saying that this is the worst defense I've ever seen. They have no chance. Chris Shula didn't deserve the job. Fire Shula. I don't think it's fair through 2 games. And I mean, people care too much about our opinions for us to have that much of a rapid reaction after 2 games. So it's a little bit different if the NFL season was longer than 17 games. I deal with it as well, covering, baseball. When I'm talking about the Yankees on my show, the Yankees have 162 games to play. And you do a show every single day after the Yankees play baseball. Well, Alexis, eventually you're going to find yourself repeating. You're going to find yourself being doom and gloom, because the reality is they play 162 games. Things will feel like the end of the year. Things will feel like, it's all over, and then things will feel great. You don't want to get too high or too low, but with football, there's 15 more games. I understand the injuries seem tough, but there's been no key injuries that are going to be out for the year, right? They still have 15 games to solve this, and they still haven't even played at home yet. So I'm ready to see this team play at home. I understand it's against the Niners, but I think that there's a lot to be patient with when it comes to the NFL. I understand being upset, but losing 41-10 or losing 13-10, it doesn't matter. If they lose to the Cardinals either way, that was going to be considered a failure. So, you just have to go towards week 3 and hope that guys can really step up in big key spots. And I mean, I did say before the season, I was like, look, Jordan Whittington is the closest thing in this draft to being the next Puka Nacua. And I wasn't hoping he'd get this opportunity, but if he did, I believed he could actually do something with it. We'll see how much they give him. I think it's going to be DeMarcus, and I think we're probably going to see Tyler Johnson as well. But, we'll also see Tutu Atwell. We'll see Jordan Whittington. We'll see Colby Parkinson. We'll see, I think, moving forward, any of you fantasy football fans wondering how this kind of changes the Rams offense, I think we might see both running backs on the field quite a bit. Blake Corum, Kyron Williams, they can be in the backfield. They can line up in the slot. I think that's something that we might see. You have to get creative, right? You have to find a way to get creative and keep this train rolling. And I understand being 0-2 sucks, but to me, you need at least 2 wins going into the bye. So you need to win 2 of the next 3 against the Packers, the Bears, and of course the Niners this weekend. And I'm not going to say that they have no shot against the Niners. Brock Purdy has not looked good. Jordan Mason has looked very good in those first 2 games, but the receiver room, now Deebo Samuel, your leading receiver, he's going to be out, right? And they don't have Christian McCaffrey. So in a lot of sense, you could look at this and say Brock Purdy was sacked 6 times yesterday. And yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think like any game is guaranteed. And I don't think necessarily any game is, like the Rams will 100% lose. I'm well aware the 49ers have given the Rams fits in the past, but if you go based on last year, they were banged up going into week 2. I mean, Cam Akers decided that right before the game, I didn't want to play for the Rams anymore, right? So then Kyron steps in. And it's like, there's a lot of things, Alexis, where you look at this and it's like, I get it's the 49ers, but the Rams were closing that gap last year. They played a really tough week 2 game. Maybe this is the time. If they could win this game, who's still going to be talking about the Arizona game if they go out on Sunday at SoFi Stadium with potentially an 80-20 49er favored crowd and they win? Who on earth is going to be thinking about the Cardinals game? I can tell you I won't, because if they come out and they, were to beat the 49ers and have an impressive win, that is the first step to really solving this issue. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. I think the issue is twofold. I think the injuries, like I said, can be overcome. I would like to see what answer they have for switching things up on defense, because whatever happened this Sunday, um, to me, that's a game plan thing. And, I hope it's not an attitude thing, kind of like we talked about, showing up not ready to play. And if it was, that's easily fixable, right? But we'll see what happens. Just something is going to have to change. Something is going to have to give, because whatever that was yesterday, I don't want to see it again. And I don't think any of us do. And I hope that the Rams wake up from whatever that was. But um, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that the Rams can do while they're trying to get everything repaired, particularly on offense. I think this is a great time to throw in Blake Corum. Uh, you know, like we talked about, you're going to have Kyron Williams doing some of these extra things. So if you actually want to run the ball, give him a breather, put in Corum, right? You have Kyron out there pass blocking, maybe getting involved in the receiving game, put in Corum. So let's see what he can do. I think it's time. I mean, he was a 3rd-round draft pick, and we're going into week 3, and he played, in garbage time against the Cardinals' second string. I don't think that's fun. I want to see him out there. So we'll see what the Rams do. But Jake, kind of in closing, summarizing the game against the Cardinals, uh, we're moving on. It was unacceptable. It was bad.
24-hour rule.
We are gonna wipe our hands of it, and I mean, obviously not forget it. Obviously use the takeaways from that game to discuss games going forward, and to use what we saw out of players in our analysis, of course. So we're not going to just completely erase it from our minds, but the feeling of being down and in the dumps is not going to do anybody any good. We can be realistic without continuing to talk about what a nightmare that was, because we all know we're not going to forget. But we're going to move forward, and we will be back on Friday night previewing this matchup against the 49ers at SoFi. First home game of the year.
If there are players to preview it for.
If there are players to preview for, like I was telling Jake before the show, our kicker's injured, if anyone didn't know that. McVay said Joshua Carty is dealing with a groin issue, but he's expected to play. And I'm not going to get conspiracy theorist on the pod, but why is everybody getting injured? This feels a little bit beyond reality. And
are you saying someone put a hex on the Rams?
I'm not saying somebody didn't, but I'm also saying that the Rams were ranked abysmally, very low when it came to like the facilities and nutrition, if we all remember
Ah,
that. And
yeah.
I'm saying that something I have had some fans, Rams fans, send me screenshots of those reports when the NFL did their rankings of teams' facilities and training and nutrition, and that the Rams were very, very low on all those lists. And I had people sending those to me saying, could this be why the Rams keep getting injured? I don't know, probably not, but it's something to consider because this is just insane. And I keep searching for a logical explanation because this is like beyond insane. Um,
Yeah.
so, assuming we still have a football team on Friday, assuming we have enough active players who are not injured, Jake and I will be back Friday night previewing our matchup against the 49ers. But until then, guys, as always, please like and subscribe. Please follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow Jake and I on Twitter. Jake is at JKBogan. I am at the Alexis Craft. And guys, as always, until next time, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.